Imagine this, you're at work, doing your job, when suddenly you're arrested, handcuffed, and processed like a criminal. But the worst part? The evidence of your innocence was found just minutes after you were driven away. This isn't just a story about a false arrest, it's about a shocking cover-up and abuse of power that you need to hear.
Hey man, go turn off any bell.
What? We'll explain everything in a second.
Oh, y'all really fucking serious?
James Humphrey clocked in at GBRS Group on December 4th, 2023, on Monday morning. GBRS Group is a veteran-owned company that sold everything from strength training programs to firearm parts, catering to the tactical community. James worked in shipping, a straightforward job that kept him busy boxing up orders and getting them out the door. That morning, his task list included shipping a BCM lower receiver, the bottom half of an AR-15 style weapon. It was standard inventory, nothing unusual. But sometime around mid-morning, someone noticed a problem. It hadn't been scanned in. The box was supposed to be gone, but it wasn't logged anywhere in the system. And here's where things went sideways fast. Someone at GBRS Group remembered seeing James leave the building earlier with a box in his hands. When he came back, he didn't have it. That was enough for them.
An item goes missing, an accusation is made? But what if the police bypass all investigation and immediately arrest someone just because of a relationship with the company?
Saw him leave with the box. Saw him come back without the box.
He didn't send it?
No, it's still outstanding. Like the shipment still hasn't been scanned in.
They connected the dots in the worst possible way. James must have taken it. He must have kept the lower receiver instead of shipping it. Never mind asking him about it. Never mind checking the loading dock or the mail room or anywhere else a box might end up in a busy warehouse. They went straight to the police.
Imagine being handcuffed and put in leg restraints for a missing firearm part, then driven for hours, while the very item you're accused of stealing is still sitting at your workplace.
The call went out and Officer Reyes responded. It didn't take long for him to arrive, and when he did, it became clear pretty quickly that this wasn't just any service call.
So he had no idea where it is, just he left it there, came back without it.
Correct. You know if he just took it through the dumpster, maybe he shipped it somewhere else. We really have no idea.
So it's just a BCM lower?
Just a BCM lower.
And what's his description? He said taller, black male.
6'2", black male, probably 230 pounds.
Okay.
Reyes knew people at GBRS Group. There was a relationship there, the kind of familiarity that makes things move faster than they probably should. No lengthy investigation, no questions for James, just action. The assumption had already been made, and now it was being treated as fact. James had no idea what was coming. Officer Reyes didn't waste time with questions. He didn't pull James aside for a conversation or ask him to explain his day. He didn't check shipping logs or look through the warehouse to see if maybe, just maybe, the box had been misplaced. Instead, he walked straight up to James and placed him under arrest. Just like that.
Go turn off any bell.
We'll explain everything in a second.
Oh, y'all really fucking serious?
The people at GBRS Group had told Reyes their version of events, and that was apparently good enough. James was seen leaving with a box. He came back without it. The item was missing. Case closed in Reyes's mind. James was confused, trying to explain that he'd shipped the item like he was supposed to, but nobody was listening. Reyes searched him on the spot, going through his pockets and belongings. He found a CBD oil pen, which was perfectly legal in Virginia. James wasn't doing anything wrong by having it, but Reyes took note of it anyway. It would come up later, used as another brush stroke in a picture they were painting of him. The search was thorough, almost performative, like Reyes needed to make a show of it for the people watching from inside the building. Then came the handcuffs. For a missing firearm part. For a box that hadn't been scanned in, James stood there in full restraints, humiliated in front of his coworkers, treated like a criminal without a single question asked. Reyes walked him to the patrol car and loaded him into the back seat. Reyes drove James away from GBRS Group, starting what would become a long, bizarre journey around Virginia Beach. This wasn't a quick trip to the station for booking. This was hours of driving, processing, paperwork, and waiting. And the whole time, back at the business, nobody bothered to do the one thing that would have cleared this up immediately: actually look for the box. James sat in the back of that patrol car, hands cuffed behind him, leg restraints making it impossible to move his feet more than a few inches. The reality of what was happening started to sink in. He hadn't stolen anything. He'd done his job. He'd shipped that lower receiver just like he was supposed to, but here he was, being treated like a thief.
Nah, just small.
What kind of baby is it?
You have everything? Yeah.
Star response?
Grab two.
Is it a speedy one?
Yeah, it's
They arrived at the police department and the processing began. Fingerprints, photos, paperwork. Every step of the formal arrest procedure, all of it documented and official. James wasn't just detained for a quick conversation. He was being booked. They logged his personal items, including that CBD pen, and went through the entire intake process like he was a legitimate suspect in a serious crime. The leg restraint stayed on the whole time. They moved him from room to room, and each new location meant more waiting, more sitting in restraints, more humiliation. The clock kept ticking. James had been in custody for over 2 hours now, and nobody at GBRS Group had called to say they'd made a mistake. Nobody had found the box. Reyes kept James moving through the system, filling out reports, making sure everything was documented properly. It was a full arrest, no question about it. There was no ambiguity here. James was in handcuffs, in leg restraints, transported in a police vehicle, and processed at the station. That's not a casual detention. That's an arrest, plain and simple. By 1:30 p.m., James had been shuffled through just about every part of the intake process. He sat in a holding area, still restrained, still waiting for someone to realize this was insane. And then, finally, Reyes's phone rang. The call came from GBRS Group. Reyes stepped away to take it, and James could only sit there and watch his body language change. Whatever they were telling him, it wasn't what Reyes expected to hear. The conversation was brief. When Reyes hung up, his expression had shifted. Not quite panic, but definitely concern. He walked back over to James without saying much at first, just started the process of getting him ready to leave. They'd found something back at the business, something important. Here's what had happened. About 10 minutes after Reyes drove away with James in handcuffs, someone at GBRS Group actually decided to look for the missing box. 10 minutes. That's all it took.
The box was found in 10 minutes. James is innocent, but instead of admitting a false arrest, the officer suddenly claims it was just a detention. Can they really rewrite reality like that?
Saved by the freaking mailman.
Hell yeah, appreciate you, sir.
Thank you for being cool with me and cooperative with me.
Because like my man, I knew like I ain't do shit like it had to get worked out. That kind of thing.
They checked the shipping area more carefully this time, went through the staging zone where outgoing packages waited for pickup, and there it was. The box with the BCM lower receiver, exactly where it was supposed to be.
So 10 minutes after you guys left, this showed up.
Can we open it and confirm it's in there? I know, but like...
Nope.
James had shipped it. He'd done his job correctly. The box had simply been overlooked in the initial search. Or maybe it got moved, or maybe someone just didn't check thoroughly enough before deciding to call the cops. But there it was, intact, Never stolen, never missing in any real sense. The people at GBRS Group had to make that call to Reyes and admit their mistake. The item they'd accused James of stealing was sitting right there in their own building. James was innocent. Completely, undeniably innocent. And he had been for the entire time Reyes had him in custody.
James lost his job and reputation, but the officer who falsely arrested him and the company that accused him, they protected each other. Is this justice or a complete abuse of power?
While James was being fingerprinted and photographed and processed through the system, the evidence of his innocence was sitting in a cardboard box not 200 feet from where they'd arrested him. Reyes loaded James back into the patrol car and started driving him back to GBRS Group. James had been in custody for roughly 4 hours. 4 hours in handcuffs and leg restraints for something that took 10 minutes to disprove. The drive back to GBRS Group was quieter than the drive away. Reyes seemed different now, a little softer in his tone, like he knew something had gone very wrong. When they pulled up to the building, he finally took the restraints off James. The handcuffs came off first, then the leg shackles. James rubbed his wrists where the metal had dug in, trying to process what had just happened to him. Reyes walked him back inside, and you could tell he was trying to smooth things over. He was apologetic, sure, but in that careful way people get when they know they've messed up but don't want to admit the full extent of it. That's when Reyes started with the revision. He told James almost casually that he hadn't really been arrested. It was just a detention, he said.
Saved by the freaking mailman.
Hell yeah, appreciate you, sir.
Thank you for being cool with me and cooperative with me.
Because like my man, I knew like I ain't do shit. Like it had to get worked out. That kind of thing.
Anyone looking at the facts would know it. But Reyes kept pushing this narrative that it was just a misunderstanding, just a precautionary measure, nothing serious. He told James he'd already informed his supervisor about what happened, because he'd had to drive him all around the city, and now they were back at square one. He handed James a business card with his name on it and his supervisor's name too. Sergeant Carabo. Like that was supposed to make things better. Like a business card could undo 4 hours of being treated like a criminal. Reyes gave James a report number and assured him everything would be documented. But here's where things got really telling. Reyes's whole demeanor changed when he went back inside to talk to the people at GBRS Group. Officer Reyes walked back into GBRS Group, and James could hear the conversation shift immediately. The tone Reyes had used with him, cautious, apologetic, trying to minimize what had happened, was gone. Now he was talking to his buddy, and the vibe was completely different. Mistakes happen, Reyes told them. He was glad they'd found the item and brought it back. There was no edge to his voice, no frustration, no mention of the fact that James had just spent 4 hours in custody for absolutely nothing. It was all smoothed over, casual, like they were discussing a minor clerical error instead of a man's freedom. Reyes and Sergeant Carabo made it clear they'd handle the paperwork. They gave the business owners a report number, same as they'd given James, but the reassurance they offered was pointed in a very specific direction. Reyes told them he was going to document the heck out of this whole situation. He'd make sure the report was thorough, detailed, airtight. But he wasn't doing that for James. He was doing it so nothing would fall back on the business owners, so they'd be protected. So this wouldn't come back to haunt GBRS Group or damage their reputation or cause them any legal trouble down the line. James stood there listening to this, realizing exactly what was happening. Reyes knew James had been screwed over. He had to know it. You don't put someone in handcuffs and leg restraints, drive them around the city for 4 hours, process them through the system, and then find out they were innocent the whole time without understanding that something went very wrong. But Reyes wasn't worried about James. He was worried about his buddy. His friend at GBRS Group had made a mistake, a massive one, and now Reyes was making sure that mistake didn't cost them anything. The whole thing reeked of favoritism, of a cozy relationship between law enforcement and a local business that got James arrested without probable cause. Reyes had jumped at the opportunity to help out his friend, no questions asked, no investigation conducted. James walked out of GBRS Group that afternoon, knowing his life had just changed in ways he couldn't fully measure yet. The handcuffs were off, the restraints were gone, but the damage was done. Within days, he lost his job. GBRS Group let him go. Whether it was embarrassment over their mistake, an attempt to distance themselves from the incident, or just the easiest way to make the problem disappear, the result was the same. James was unemployed. The man who'd been falsely arrested because his employer couldn't be bothered to look for a box before calling the cops was now out of work. His reputation took a hit too. Word spreads in tight-knit communities, especially in the veteran and tactical circles where GBRS Group operated. People heard James had been arrested at work, taken away in handcuffs, accused of stealing firearm parts. Some heard the full story eventually, but not everyone did. Rumors stick harder than corrections. Even with the truth out there, James had to live with the stain of that accusation, the assumption that maybe there was something to it. Maybe he'd done something wrong, even if they couldn't prove it. The emotional toll was brutal. Being arrested is traumatic enough when you've actually committed a crime. Being arrested when you're completely innocent, when you know you did nothing wrong, and then watching the people responsible for that arrest protect each other instead of you, that's a different kind of damage. James dealt with anxiety, anger, humiliation. He'd been treated like a criminal in front of his coworkers, paraded around in restraints, processed like a suspect, all while the evidence of his innocence sat in a box at his workplace. And then he had to watch Officer Reyes promise to protect the business that caused it all. The financial strain hit hard too. No job meant no income. Bills don't stop because you've been falsely arrested. Rent doesn't pause because your employer threw you under the bus. James had to figure out how to survive while dealing with everything else that came with this nightmare. James decided to fight back the only way he could. He set up a GoFundMe to help cover the financial damage and to raise awareness about what had happened to him. He laid out the whole story, the false arrest, the 4 hours in custody, the cozy relationship between Officer Reyes and GBRS Group, the way he'd been protected while James lost everything. People responded. The campaign raised $45,000, a testament to how many people saw this for what it really was: an abuse of power and a failure of both law enforcement and corporate responsibility. Because that's exactly what this was. Officer Reyes made an arrest without probable cause. There was no investigation, no evidence. Just an accusation from a business owner and a willingness to act on it immediately because of a personal relationship. That's a Fourth Amendment violation. A false arrest. James was detained, restrained, and processed based on nothing more than someone's assumption and a cop's eagerness to help his buddy. The fact that it only took 10 minutes to find the box after James was taken away proves how little effort went into determining the truth before ruining his day and his life. GBRS Group needs to be held accountable too. They chose to call the police instead of talking to James. They chose accusation over conversation, law enforcement over basic human decency. And when their mistake became obvious, when they found that box sitting right there in their own building, they let Officer Reyes protect them in his report, while James walked away with nothing but a business card and a destroyed reputation. Criminally and civilly, there should be consequences for what they did. Employers can't just weaponize law enforcement against their employees without evidence and expect to walk away clean. This could have been cleared up in 10 minutes. That's the most infuriating part. 10 minutes of actually looking for the box, and none of this happens. But Officer Reyes chose to put James through the ringer to help his friend, and now James has to rebuild his life from scratch. The truth here is simple. Power was abused, trust was broken, and an innocent man paid the price for someone else's laziness and someone else's loyalty. James did his job. Everyone else failed to do theirs. So here's the question. Do you think Officer Reyes and GBRS Group should face consequences for what they put James through? If this story got you thinking, drop a like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more stories that expose the truth behind the headlines.